My boss stood up at my own retirement party, in front of 40 coworkers gathered in the break room of Marchbanks Logistics in Pittsburgh, raised a plastic cup of grocery store champagne, and told everyone with an easy laugh that I was endlessly replaceable, in the best possible way, proof that good systems outlast any one person. My name is Louisa Ferngrove, 61 years old, and I had spent 34 years building the operational backbone of a mid-sized freight logistics company, starting as an entry-level dispatcher and eventually becoming the director of operations, a role in which I had personally designed and never fully documented in any formal handbook, nearly every critical system the company relied on to function. Vendor relationships built over decades. An intricate scheduling logic that existed mostly in my own head, and a series of spreadsheets only I fully understood, and relationships with 11 major clients who had, over the years, come to trust me specifically, rather than simply trusting the company as an abstract institution. I want to be honest about how that comment landed, standing there in a break room decorated with a happy retirement banner I'd watched a coworker tape slightly crooked to the wall that morning. Anthony Marchbanks, the company's owner and the son of the man who'd hired me 34 years earlier, delivered that line with the easy confidence of someone who genuinely believed it, someone who had never once, in 3 decades of watching me quietly keep the entire operation running smoothly, actually understood how much of that smoothness depended on knowledge and relationships that existed almost nowhere except inside my own experience. I smiled through it, the way I imagine most people smile through comments like that at their own retirement party, understanding that correcting your boss in front of 40 coworkers rarely accomplishes anything except making the room uncomfortable. I accepted a bouquet of flowers, a modest severance bonus, and a framed photo collage someone had assembled from 3 decades of company holiday parties, and I drove home that evening feeling a complicated mixture of genuine excitement for retirement and a quieter, more persistent sting from a comment I couldn't quite shake. I want to be clear that I didn't retire out of any dramatic conflict or resentment. I retired because I was 61 years old, financially prepared, and genuinely ready for a different chapter of my life. I had no intention, driving home from that party, of ever thinking about Marchbanks Logistics again beyond the occasional friendly text with former coworkers. That changed considerably faster than I expected. 6 weeks into retirement, I got a call from my former assistant, Priyanka Desmukh, who had taken over a portion of my responsibilities following my departure, her voice tight with a stress I recognized immediately from decades of managing operational crises myself. "Louisa, I don't know who else to ask," she said. "The Kestrel manufacturing account is threatening to leave. Nobody can figure out why the automated scheduling system keeps generating conflicting delivery windows for their Western routes, and I think it might be related to some manual override logic you built years ago that was never actually documented anywhere formal. I want to be honest about the specific satisfaction, mixed with genuine concern for people I still cared about, that I felt hearing this. I hadn't built that override system out of any territorial instinct to make myself irreplaceable. I'd built it, incrementally, over roughly a decade, responding to specific, evolving problems as they arose, in the reasonable, if ultimately short-sighted, assumption that institutional knowledge would naturally transfer through the kind of gradual mentorship I'd always tried to provide, rather than through any formal documentation I'd simply never prioritized creating. I walked Priyanka through the override logic over the phone that evening, free of charge, genuinely wanting to help people I still considered friends navigate a problem I understood I bore at least some responsibility for, given how much critical knowledge had apparently left the building with me. That one phone call, I would later learn, was only the beginning of a considerably larger unraveling. Over the following 4 months, without my direct involvement beyond the occasional favor call from former colleagues, Marchbanks Logistics lost 3 of its 11 major accounts, including Kestrel Manufacturing, following a series of scheduling errors and client relationship missteps that stemmed, according to what Priyanka and others told me during increasingly frequent, increasingly stressed phone calls, from gaps in institutional knowledge that had simply never been transferred before my departure. Anthony Marchbanks called me directly 5 months after my retirement party, his voice carrying none of the easy confidence I remembered from that break room toast. "Louisa, I need to be honest with you," he said. "We're in serious trouble. I didn't understand how much of this company was actually running on things you knew that nobody else did. I need help, and I understand if you have absolutely no interest in bailing us out after how I talked about you at your own retirement party. I want to be honest about the complicated mixture of vindication and genuine concern I felt in that moment. I hadn't spent the previous 5 months waiting for this call, hadn't wished failure on a company I genuinely cared about for over 3 decades, filled with people I still considered friends. But I won't pretend there wasn't some quiet, human satisfaction in hearing my former boss finally understand exactly how much his casual dismissal at that retirement party had misunderstood about what I'd actually contributed. "I'm interested in helping," I told him. "But I'm not coming back as an employee, Anthony. If I do this, it's as a consultant, on my own terms, at a rate that reflects exactly how replaceable I actually turned out to be." Rate I proposed, after several days of careful consideration, was considerably higher than my former annual salary would have suggested was reasonable for a part-time consulting arrangement. A decision I made deliberately, understanding that the company's crisis had created a rare, honest opportunity to be compensated fairly for decades of undervalued institutional knowledge, rather than any impulse toward petty financial punishment. Anthony agreed within a day, and I want to describe honestly what the following 6 months actually involved, because I think it matters considerably more than any simple narrative of triumphant vindication. I spent that time not simply solving the immediate scheduling crisis, but doing something I probably should have done years earlier, systematically documenting every piece of institutional knowledge that had existed only in my own head. Building formal training materials, creating a genuine knowledge transfer system with Priyanka and 2 other operations staff, ensuring that whatever happened to me personally in the future, the company would never again be quite so vulnerable to any single person's departure. I want to be honest about an important nuance here, because I think it matters to understanding this story fully. Anthony's original comment at my retirement party wasn't entirely wrong in principle. Good systems genuinely should outlast any one person, and my own failure to document my knowledge more thoroughly over the years bore real responsibility for the crisis that followed my departure. What was wrong wasn't the underlying idea. It was the casual, dismissive way he delivered it, publicly diminishing 3 decades of genuine, irreplaceable contribution in service of a tidy, convenient line about institutional systems, without ever actually having built the kind of documentation and knowledge transfer that would have made that line true at the time he said it. The consulting arrangement, originally scoped for 6 months, ultimately extended to just over a year, during which Marchbanks Logistics not only recovered the 3 lost accounts, but secured 2 new major clients, aided considerably by the more resilient, better documented operational systems I'd finally built out properly. Systems that no longer depended entirely on any single person's memory and judgment. Anthony and I had a conversation near the end of that consulting engagement that I want to describe honestly, because I think it captures something important about how this story actually resolved. "Owe you a real apology," he told me, sitting in the same break room where he'd made his original comment, though considerably more subdued than he'd been at that retirement party. "I said something careless and untrue at your retirement party, and it took nearly losing this entire company to understand exactly how untrue it actually was. You weren't replaceable, Louisa. You were essential, and I never bothered to actually notice that until you were gone." I accepted that apology, genuinely, though I want to be honest that I didn't need it quite as badly as he perhaps assumed I did. I had already, over the course of that consulting year, received something I found considerably more meaningful than any apology. Fair, honest compensation for decades of undervalued work, and the quiet satisfaction of building systems robust enough that the next person who eventually filled a role like mine would never have to carry the same invisible, unacknowledged weight I had carried for 34 years. I fully retired again 18 months after that original party, This time with considerably less ambiguity about my actual value to the company I'd spent over 3 decades helping build. Marchbanks Logistics sent me off with a second small gathering, considerably more modest than the first. But this time, Anthony's toast focused specifically, deliberately, on exactly what I had built and exactly how essential it had actually been. A correction I hadn't demanded. But that meant considerably more to me for having been offered freely, once someone had finally taken the time to genuinely understand what they'd almost lost. I think often about the particular irony of being called endlessly replaceable at a retirement party, only to watch an entire company's operations nearly unravel within months of my departure. I don't think that irony makes me special or irreplaceable in some grand, permanent sense. Everyone, eventually, is replaced by someone else who learns to do the work in their own way. But I do think there's something worth remembering in how quietly, how invisibly, genuine expertise and institutional knowledge can accumulate over decades, easy to dismiss in a casual toast, considerably harder to actually replace once it walks out the door.